today's top story, WFRT News has learned that Bob, the famous YouTube personality who vanished without a trace in December of 2011, has been found. It turns out that the popular Rodent has not been gallivanting around the world, partying with the female casts of Babes of Star Trek Gone Wild, nor has he married or proposed marriage to any of them. He has in fact been tied to a 2x4 in the back wall of a closet in a cabin in rural Montana until late last month. During his confinement, Bob occasionally had the opportunity to scratch at the insulation of a telephone wire that ran up the 2x4 he was tied to. When he finally managed to expose the bare wires, he began touching them together in an effort to send an SOS. Bob continued sending his MacGyver-style distress signal for 6 months before a phone company tech finally noticed the pattern in the static noise it created in the phone lines and alerted law enforcement. 3 days later, the FBI raided the cabin. Bob has since been hospitalized where he's being treated for malnutrition and assorted cuts and bruises. Officials tell WFRT News that literally thousands of rumors about him starting businesses and buying obscene amounts of very expensive goods being seen in hundreds of cities and towns across 24 countries were all started by the kidnappers spreading false leads to deter investigators. They say that the few confirmed Bob sightings were in fact a body double hired to impersonate the famous Rodent. The body double was sent out to appear in various locations, leaving bits of hair cut from Bob to make sure that DNA evidence pointed to his having been there. When questioned about why they kidnapped him in the first place and why they never made any ransom demands, one of the kidnappers replied, "We wanted to be in one of his videos, but he refused, so we decided to keep him until he gave in." Authorities say that Bob insisted that the only boobs he wouldn't feature in a video were the ones dumb enough to nag him about it. An explosion rocked New Hermiton today. The Hermiton Herald offices were severely damaged when an explosion destroyed most of the entryway. Here's Jeeves with the story.
I'm standing here in front of the Hermiton Herald, where earlier today the entryway was destroyed by an explosion. There were no injuries, even though the publisher, Zombie Cleo, several guests taking a tour, and the newspaper's entire staff were all present at the time. Popular opinion is that it was simply a random creeper that made its way into town. Others believe that it was a direct assault on the publisher in response to either something she's written or possibly something she's refused to write. Officials decline comment, saying the investigation is ongoing. As if to add insult to injury, or simply finish the job, as debris from the explosion was being cleaned up, Zombie Cleo was attacked by an unknown assailant using an invisibility potion. Determined not to let these attacks stop her, she has already begun work on the next edition of the paper. This is Jeeves reporting on the scene for WFRT News.
Now here's Sir Gorf with the weather.
Large portions of the central U.S. were struck yesterday with severe winter storms, including more than generous amounts of freezing rain, sleet, and snow. There are widespread reports of power outages due to power lines being struck down by frozen tree limbs, and roads throughout the region are quite slick. Here's the Boob with an on-the-scene report from Nutjob Hills.
Well, I'm pretty sure you can see the snowfall, but there's more to it than just a little bit of snow, because you hear that ticking? That's sleet and freezing rain. Actually, I believe it's sleet, and it's just the beginning. We're going to get a good bunch of stuff today, and I'm so glad that I don't have to go outside at all again today.
Currently, the weather remains clear and cold, with the highs around 27 degrees Fahrenheit and lows in the low teens. More snow is expected by Tuesday, followed by a brief warming trend into the mid-40s. Citizens are advised to remain indoors whenever possible and keep their favorite hot beverage and soup handy to prevent the brass monkey from experiencing catastrophic losses.
Be sure to stay tuned to WFRT News for updates on these and other stories as they become available.